this morning, but hopefully we'll finish by 11, God willing. And I'll do that which I have to take note of.
You have an order? Something on the order?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, Rabbi, when one engages in that which is known as a Siyum or completion, one has to first understand the concept, the involvement, what the Siyum actually mean. Happens to be that in the constellation of Jewish values, Siyum itself has taken on a role in a life of its own. What really is Siyum? Of course, we all are aware what Siyum is actually all about, because every single Simchat Torah, we are Messiah, we finish the reading of the Torah, and then we go again to begin. And of course, the rabbis have in fact told us that when you finish a Masechet, whichever case it might be, you must do a Hadran, wherein you return and go back to that Masechet itself. When you think about those two examples of Siyum, it teaches us three critical points as to what Siyum is really all about. And one has to appreciate what these 3 points are all about in order to make sure that a Siyum engaged in presently is actually the fulfillment of what a Siyum really is. Obviously, you could engage in a Siyum of anything and finish Pirkei Avot. Did I Siyum it or not? It depends on whether or not you appreciate these 3 points. If you appreciate these 3 points and you understand them well, then that's called a Siyum. Seudat mitzvah. On the other hand, if you simply engage in the reading through Pirkei Avot, doesn't mean, and you finished it. Does that mean you Siyumed it? No. So one has to first understand the concept as to what a Siyum is all about. And for the next few minutes, we'd like to review. Oh, sorry, Gesundheit. You can't Aisha, you have to Gesundheit. One has to review, we will review these 3 points with a particular application to the book of Ahava and our engagement in the Siyum and the Rambam. First point, embedded deeply in the concept of Siyum is obviously enough, we all should know this, finishing, continue, understanding, good.
The food.
Food, yes. Thank you for responding to this, David, wonderful. By the way, everyone should be aware that I was there when David was a baby in Boston, Eddie said son, and I took away his last bottle. Those who know, we used to live very close to each other. They were wonderful to us, Eddie and Frida said, and I remember when Eddie and I took away his last bottle, which is why he became a psychologist, but okay. So we were there. So thank you, David. It's wonderful to share this with you today. No, you're missing the point. What is Siyum really all about? Embedded in the notion of Siyum are the seeds of return. We never Siyum, we never finish, we never complete ever the study of any particular section of Torah knowledge, ever. Rather, when you engage in a Siyum properly, you are pledging yourself to do what? Hadran, lahazor, to go back and restudy, re-understand. Learning is never over. All learning leads to return. As the Gemara tells us that when you study something 101 times, that's if you study 100 times. So therefore, all learning, whenever you engage in learning, though you are engaged in a Siyum, a completion, rather, what are you really doing? You are returning. You are returning to your learning. Eli Braha, explain this to me. At a commencement, what happens? You commence. What does the word commence mean? To begin. Look how interesting that the English word itself captures the same concept. At a commencement, we all see that as an end. We have commenced, we've finished. No, to commence means to begin, exactly. So, in the same way, at our Siyum, we're going to return again. On Simchat Torah, we begin again at Bereshit. At Hadran Masechet, am I never, God forbid I would say, never going to go back to that Masechet? Absolutely not. Though I Hadran, I finished, I pledge, I must now pledge myself to go back to return to that Masechet and re-study it. All commencement for us means a return to a new beginning, to review, and more. The question now is, what is the more? What additionally has to happen in order to make sure that this is really a Siyum? We've already spoken about, Siyum means to return, in this sense. But there's something else that has to happen in order to make sure there's actually a Siyum itself. And this is our second point. In the study of any section of Torah literature, expansively noted, Torah don't mean 5 books of Moshe, I mean any piece of Torah literature. When one studies that section of Torah literature, and you've completed it, and you have now Siyumized it, excuse that word, I believe it's the first time it has been used in history. I don't think anybody else uses the word Siyumized.
You just caducified it.
And I think, yes, thank you.
It's a real word?
It's not a real word.
That's not a real question, is it? There has to be an awareness. Point number 2 is an awareness. If you want this to be a Seudat Mitzvah and a Siyum, then there has to be an awareness. What awareness must you have when you Siyumize that section of Torah? Return, we said. What else has to be? There has to be something more. What awareness must you have?
Well, you learned something.
Okay, yes, you've learned something. Take that one step further.
You haven't finished.
You haven't finished? Yes. Not good enough?
Excited. You're excited.
Not yet? Sorry, Leslie?
That's the answer.
Add to it. Thank you. You have time.
Wow.
Good job. Add to it something more. You must raise the question, did I, in fact, engage so fully, so completely, so totally, that I have all of the levels of meaning, all of dimension, all the aspects, or is this something that I can now re-understand, reinterpret, learn something more my next time around? So it's not only about returning to the study of it, I must now have the awareness that it's something that I actually missed. In other words, when you're studying a piece of halakha, Torah, anything, there is an awareness that as I read or reread, reading the first time, or now that I'm going back to it, that there's something that has to wow me, blow me away, excite me, energize me. I tell every class that I have, as those who've had me, seniors, I say, beginning of first class, I want you to be aware that if I don't wow you twice this year, I want you to go out of the community and tell them the worst teacher you ever had in the world. Ask Isaac. He came a few days late, so I'm not sure if you heard it. But I have to wow them. I have at least one. It's only November. I'm doing great. Which means they will spontaneously burst down and say, wow, we didn't know that. And that's a very important point. Because you have an intellectual, sorry?
Wow.
Yes. Only one more, and I got 1 in 30 years. I'm doing okay. It's true because intellectually, and you're going to see how I'm going to weave this into a further presentation. Intellectually, there's a nexus, connecting point between that which your mind actually thinks about and how that connects to your emotional state of mind. Learning is intellectual. Learning is emotional, and there's a very clear nexus between those two. Wow means, wow, I'm excited, enthusiastic, I learned something. That's emotional. The knowledge has to explode into a wow moment. It happened last week, and Hillel happens to be it. Where's it go? Kid just said, whatever the context was, wow! I said, that's one. They said, oh shucks, they tried, they know it's going to happen. But I'm going to get them, of course, to go out. In 6 months, it's going to happen. So therefore, when you study Torah, I'd be very sad to the point of shedding tears, literally, that if you told me you read through all Ahava and had no wow moments.
Tremendous.
Oh, good. You have to have a wow moment in any time you've learned something. Because if you only did it coldly, precisely, analytically, logically, and that didn't excite you emotionally, not a Siyum. You have to have a wow moment when you're learning, either a point, an idea, halakha, whatever it may be. You have to see this anew, and I didn't know that particular point before. So all of a sudden I said, wow, over here. If you happen to study in a very calm, ho-hum fashion, then you haven't really studied. You haven't really learned. There's a concept in Talmud itself, and I remember this 40 years later, in a very warm, loving way, which is known as Milchamta Shel Torah. Torah is an emotional, exciting, engaging, fully engaging battle with your heart and your mind, with the text itself. And it had a Havruta, Rabbi Heshi Pincus, who now was in Chicago, was the Mashiach Ruchani in Chicago, and he would actually engage in a battle. He says to me, don't you see this? It's a battle. Rashi, Tosafot, shooting at each other. I pulled away. Actually scared me sometimes. But he fully taught me the emotional aspect of learning itself. Torah engages heart, mind, and soul to the extent that if you're reading through and you're sort of like laning, just going through laning, you're reading it, turning pages, just doing it, nice. Is that Talmud Torah? Is that a Siyum? It's not a Siyum. It has to totally engage your attention, and now you're going back, you're returning, and now you say, I have the awareness, I'm going to learn something now. So I'm going to return with a renewed passion. I'm going to return with a renewed passion to discover something that I missed the first time around. How many times have you prayed? How many times have you said the Siddur? You turned the pages, you went through it, you did it. If you're fully engaged in prayer, there should be a wow moment in prayer. I had one that happened to be 10 days ago. Just happened to be, all of a sudden, it's a quasi-revelation. All of a sudden, I saw, wow, I didn't think of that connecting link in tefillah. Could be two tefillot, an understanding, a depth, an aspect, dimension, whatever it may be. And I said, astounding. I've prayed this prayer thousands of times, and all of a sudden, something new emerged. The text excited me to the point that though I've said it 1,000 times, the text aroused in me this complete new understanding of that particular text. It's true in tefillah. You've seen Pesukim. Whenever I prepared, did I short and things like this, and I start with Torah Temimah, one of my favorites of all Sefarim, and I will have dates of when I studied, read it, and I'll put over 1983, 1988, 1982, and then sometimes I will see again something new, and again you learned, I never saw that before. And this happens to everybody who learns. All of a sudden, a new dimension of that pasuk is revealed all of a sudden. It's a wow moment. Something overwhelming takes place. New thought regarding a halacha, as you will see in a few moments, becomes a wow moment for you. More specifically, in learning, in order to fulfill as a siyum, whether your first time or your 10th time, you have to be attuned to those wow moments. So let me give you just 1 or 2 or 3 examples of what I had studied over here. And those of you who know me, I mark up my books and things like that. And this took place, is very interesting. This is at 2 o'clock in the morning. Actually, I finished everything at 2 o'clock in the morning, just about. So it's not that legible, never is. But here, this was an amazing statement to me. And yet, what's amazing about it? That I know the halacha. I've seen it in many different contexts. I've seen it in Makor Chaim, I've seen Yaakov Yosef, I've seen it all over the place. And through the Rambam, we know all this halacha over here. But here, my comment was, what I wrote over here.
Wow. Oh. How powerful. I wrote a wow this morning, I'm going to show you.
Okay, look at it. Okay, I want to hear it today. So what over here? Here's one example. Please open up those who have the Rambam. Hilchot Tefillah, Perek Shemini. We have the Rambam in front of you. Those women, I hope you have.
What page? Tefillah Shemini.
Are you asking a question in between?
Yes, you may.
If you're studying volume to volume and you're constantly having wows and you're constantly having
You
experiences.
never constantly have
I'm
wows.
saying, if this is occurring, you can have a wow 4 or 5 times an hour. So, if you
Not
don't-
usually, not
really
usually,
my-
but okay.
Really, my question is, if you don't see you, are you violating something?
No,
Okay.
not at all. Correct. Good point. Not at all. Good point. But here we find this very interesting halakha. And again, I know the halakha, but at this moment in time, think of, sorry, chapter 8.
What page?
I don't know. Somebody announce the page. Rabbi Rosenberg, your new father.
102.
Therefore, you have to announce pages.
102.
That's called non sequitur.
102, 103.
Were you with me? Got it? Yeah, 102?
I think so. I don't know which halakha.
Aleph.
What chapter was it?
102.
Chapter 8, halakha Aleph. Now, I know the halakha, we all know perhaps it's halakha, but for some reason, think of yourselves as a dynamic human being. On a physiological level, you all know that you change. You have 300 or 400 trillion cells in your body. And at every moment, your body is developing, changing physiologically, intellectually, mentally. So when I saw this halakha 20 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever it was, I was at point X. But 20 years later, or in my case, 12 years later, a lot has happened. So this halakha took on a completely new life for me personally. So I'm reading it now, whatever time it was in the morning. Tfilat hatzibur nishma'at tamid. The prayer of a kahal is always heard by Borei Olam. Ba'afilu hayu bahem chotim. Even that guy who slept all Shabbat and now comes to shul, no matter who he is, this tefillah is going to be heard by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Enak Baruch Hu mo'es. Never will Borei Olam ever mo'es be disgusted by the prayer of the Rabbim. So if you have a minyan, be there. God promises, the Rambam promises that tefillah will always be heard. Now,
Nabi means rabbis? Or
Nabi means anybody.
Multitude.
So imagine the following scenario. Very good, excellent point. Thank you, Ralph. Just imagine the following point. Imagine, Rambam says to us, with Rabbim, there are many people there, and he goes out of his way, the Rambam tells us, Afilu hayu bahem chotim. Because that's sin all day long. So let's say I have the rabbi in a shul, and I have a whole shul of chotim. Is that possible?
Yeah.
Obviously, if you go someplace, and I respect this amazingly, Oregon. You go to Portland, Oregon to be a rabbi, as Rabbi Michael Kaplan did. And actually, I called him a few times just to see how he's doing, things like that. It's very difficult, things like that. So he's in a very unusual situation. Portland, Oregon. So he's there doing his best. He's a fantastic person. And to go all across country to be a rabbi is fantastic. Not easy. It's very difficult to do so. So in a situation where he's the rabbi and very well trained and really on the money, yet it's a synagogue where you're not sure if you have him in Gan, Shemir Shabbat. That's kind of even striking and strange. Or similarly, Eddie Andrew was telling me yesterday, how he said something very funny to me. He said, it was a great speech, I think it was fantastic, amazing. You hit a grand slammer, bottom of the ninth, bases loaded, fantastic, fantastic guys. I said, was that against the Red Sox? That far he wouldn't go. So he told me when he was in Quincy in the 1960s, no Shomer Shabbat people there. It was his family, Shomer Shabbat, and the rabbi. So you have Tefillah of Tzibur of Rabbim, where Rubam are transgressors, and yet over here, Baruch Hu says, I'm not mu'es in the prayer of that Rabbim. So therefore, Lefichach, Sarich Adam L'Shatef Atzmo. You should always participate, be involved with Tzibur, and don't pray alone. Obviously, if you have no choice in the matter, or whatever it may be, if you get to work, it's one story. But look at the power of the Tzibur. This morning, when I was emphasizing in the morning other class, what Knesset Sale is all about. It's about every minyan represents, and I'll just say it again for those who are not there, every minyan is a microcosm of a macrocosm of what Knesset Sale is all about, which means, there's Rabbi Soloveitchik's point, not my point, obviously, which represents every single Jew who ever lived in the past, every single Jew who lives in the present, and every single Jew who will live, Atimut Mashiach. That's called Knesset Israel, Rabbi Soloveitchik's terminology. It's all. Your minyan of 10 people who has Chotim in their midst is representative of that Knesset Israel. And that's why it works. Because Afilu Rubam Chotim, they're all Chotim. It's not only the Chotim, and you'll see the power of this point in a moment. Astoundingly, never understood it till just now. Just now I had an insight, a wow moment. It's funny how the brain works sometimes. The text. You'll see this in a moment. I just understood an issue that bothered me to no end last night. It's bothered me when I did the Gemara Sanhedrin on this topic 30 years ago. I never understood it till just now. What'd you say? Say that again?
I said, wow.
That's twice in 20 minutes. You're easy.
You're easy.
You're good. You're good. I just thought of the answer to this question. I'm moved myself. Just now I had the answer. So you'll see that in a second. Amazing. So therefore, that minyan of Chotim is really subsumed and representative, no less, of Knesset Israel. Every Jew ever lived, every non-Jew who became a Jew, root onward, everybody is represented in that minyan. Right? That's the Rambam saying to us over here. That's Knesset Israel. That's everybody. So therefore, a person should always be part of that Knesset Israel. Hashem HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to us in almost every Sadik Shalabim, you must pray, you should pray with the Tzibur. Good. Always go to shul. Because your prayer is always heard by the Knesset. If you have a synagogue in your city, you don't pray there, he's called Shachen Ra.
Yeah.
He's an evil neighbor. You don't go to that shul, evil neighbor. It's an interesting issue how the Rambam says this. I often see people walking from further west, going further east, passing right by the shul. And I think of this Rambam, Shachen Ra. It just bothers me a little bit, whatever your reason, fine, I understand. I'm pretty liberal about this issue. Shachen Ra. I think of the Rambam. So I'm saying, I think of the Rambam, Shachen Ra. And the Rambam goes further and says to us over here, Mitzvah Lerut B'Beit HaKnesset. Shnei Emar, and he gives us the whole entire story. They say all this very good, very nice. And it happens to be Beit Midrash, all this. And then later on, look at Halacha Vav. Here's my wow moment. And we'll see it, wait 1 second, a little bit below. Here. We'll see the wow moment that just struck me.
Page 103.
Thank you. Rabbi Jordan, new father, is really enthusiastic. Doesn't want to go home, that's what he's good. A person should not say on his own, 10 people. If you have to say individually without the tzibur, it's called Puras Shema. Good. You need Kaddish, Asara. At Kohanim, what do I need? Asara. Asara is 10 people. Now comes this astounding. And the Kohanim, of course, part of the minyan. Should call Asara Misrael. Whenever you have 10 Jewish people praying together, they're called an Aidah. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Aidah.
Witness.
No. Congregation. Aidah means congregation. Now, if that's the case, and this is Gemara Sanhedrin, I think it's the Ahava, the Zayin. I had seen it 30 years ago, and it bothered me then, it bothers me now, it bothered me last night when I was doing this before. What bothers you about the Pasuk the Rambam quotes?
Should have brought a positive one.
Excellent, exactly. Rambam! How dare you bring over here this horrifying Pasuk? What's the context?
It's the Gemara.
I just said that, yeah. I just said that, correct. It's the Gemara, correct, and he talks about it. So all that's true, but so what? So now the easy answer is simply, Gemara said it, Rambam quote it, and that's it.
So he continues, Sharei Yatzui Yoshua V'Chalel.
Understood, that means 10.
No, I know, but...
So there's the positiveness and the negativeness.
You're right. No, I'll go much more. Yes, but more than that. I'll go more than that. The Rambam, of course, quoting him on itself, and has this big.
You still have the potential to transform them. They're coming to shul. You have the.
Except what? Let's go back to the context. We're talking about the Meragilim. Disaster for the Jewish people, wherein we were horrifyingly so castigated that Moshe Rabbeinu had to pray for them. It's like Heta Ayagel and all that. It was a negative, horrible experience. So your first question would be, well, the Rambam quotes the Gemara. So I ask you the question, why does the Gemara use this pasuk? Right, so that's okay, same question. So the issue over here would be, is the Rambam simply only quoting the pasuk because the Gemara quotes the pasuk, or some deeper dimension over here? And I think the answer to my wow moment of a few moments ago is, because this proves the Rambam's point. The Gemara is proving the point, Rambam's quoting this point, that Ad Matai La'adah Azot. This is an evil congregation, yet it's the Jewish people. And therefore, that shows that ultimately, when Moshe says, in this context, what key two words? Salachti kidvarecha. Precisely because this is an evil congregation, that Borei Olam is going to say to Moshe Rabbeinu at this point, Salachti kidvarecha, the intimacy between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Jewish people is so strong that afilu chotim, the entire Eidah is ra'ah. So to the contrary, I will take Eli's point and strengthen it by saying, put the two tzaddikim out of it. They're not justifying the 10 evil people. The 10 evil people have a standing as chotim, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu says about whom? Yeshua and Caleb? No, they're home free. They're going to the promised land. But Borei Olam over here is saying, in this context, notwithstanding the fact that I subtract the righteous, what I'm saying, I'm going to celebrate those people who transgress. And I will tell Moshe Rabbeinu, what an astounding lesson it is. If you're in Portland, Oregon, or in Quincy, Massachusetts, that you have a kahal. That kahal is all chotim. Even all 10. 10 chotim. Ultimately, Borei Olam will forgive even the chotim. And more striking, they didn't do teshuvah. They had to pay a price for all this. But Knesset Yisrael far transcends even 10 chotim. So this pasuk, in this Rambam, and this Gemara as well, all of that strikingly comes home, teaches us a very important lesson about how we approach other Jews. So the guy who was sleeping on Shabbat, he's in, you're right. Great guy, Tzedek Elokim, Jewish person. I acted too rashly in saying he's a 0, he's a +4. At least. 4 good enough? You want 10?
That's good.
Okay, we got it. Good. So over here you say that the Rambam teaches me that this pasuk legitimizes and justifies chotim as parakahal, which goes back to the first Rambam, that this is called a tzibur. This is called anedah, nishma'at tamid. No matter who's there, who's praying, Borei Olam, which this reflects on our relationship, Borei Olam. Afilu aywa chotim, no problem. Ultimately, that anedah is kadosh. Though they're all chotim, which is kind of astounding. Good. So that to you was one powerful. Another one that I'd say, I have 40 of these, but go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
But it's not one Jew. It's when they come together as 10 that they become.
Oh, absolutely. Because that is a microcosm of the macrocosm of Knesset Yisrael. That's Rabbi celebration. Have a wonderful day. Let me just look at one or two more points over here that I found to be very exciting. In Mezuzah, look at the Mezuzah, Perek Dalet, Mezuzah Perek Dalet, Halacha Het. Yes, Mark.
You keep saying Rubam chotim.
No, Rabim. He says Rabim.
Yesh bahem.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you're taking it a step further and making it Rubam chotim.
Only based on the pasuk that the Rambam quotes. Ad matai la'adah azot is all. And Borei Olam says Afkid Barecha. So that is all evil people, but they are subsumed under Knesset Yisrael with Rabbi Salvation, perhaps me interpreting him.
So why didn't he write it that way? He didn't say, he says afilu yesh bahem chotim. He didn't say afilu Rubam chotim. He didn't say that.
Correct, agreed. And I think
Why didn't he say that?
I think we can come back to that point when we read this again.
7 years.
Zat Hashem, God willing, we should celebrate together and come back to that point and see whether or not, I could answer it now, but I don't want to take the time for that, but I think we have to really think about that question and see what the Rambam would say and the implications if he would have said that. Because as a public, as Maya pointed out, Rambam is a very careful writer. You do not find a more careful writer in all Jewish literature than the Rambam. Every word, every concept, clearly defined, precise, analytical, is an astounding work. So we have to ask that question. What is formulation? And how does that fit into the broader corpus of the Rambam? And his historical context as well. Egypt, in the year 1200, where was it at? How many Jews? How many particular Siyum? What will be the implication of saying that publicly in that context? So all that plays into our answer, but not for now. Okay, very quickly. Can't go too quickly. Perek Revi'i of Hilchot Mezuzah. Page?
118.
118. Chapter 4, Halacha Het. So here, of course, I had studied this halacha 40 years ago, 50 years ago. I know this halacha. I know the halacha, and I studied Shulchan Aruch and Mishneh Barak going back. Not new halacha, but a new insight, a new understanding. Something struck me with this halacha. Now, this kishaholet adam tefillin. When you take off your tefillin, that's the anbikli. You're going to put them away in your koracha. Don't put the shel yad on the bottom of it. You took off your shel rosh, took off shel yad. I put my shel yad in first. No, don't do that. And put the shel rosh on top of it. Don't do that. Why not? Because when I'm going to take them out tomorrow, little shan, and I'm going to put them on tomorrow, I might touch the shel rosh tehillah. You all have this issue, by the way. This is a very contemporary halacha. And some of us who put them, let's say, on the right side and left side. Right. Make sure your shel yad is on the right side, and you touch your shel yad on the right side, yad the right side, and you touch that first. Because what would happen otherwise? If I happen to touch my shel rosh, well, I should then put on my shel rosh. Why should I put on, theoretically, that's the halacha. Why should I do that? Because you never pass by a mitzvah. I have mitzvah putting on tefillin. I touch the shel rosh. I want to put on my tefillin shel rosh. Because I touched it. Can't let the mitzvah go by. So I'm ending up putting my shel rosh, then putting my shel yad, negative. So therefore the Rambam tells you over here, you must actually make sure you put your tefillin away. You're going to put them in the way that you will first touch your shel yad, put it on, and then take your shel rosh and put it on. Explains. You're going to end up leaving it alone, then taking out the yad. You cannot take your shel rosh before your shel yad. You never are allowed to abandon, forsake a mitzvah, the mitzvah and then go to the mitzvah. So theoretically, not practically, theoretically, I touch a shel rosh, put it on. But I can't do that. I can't do that. So I have to abandon my shel rosh, leave it on the side, go to my shel yad, as the shel rosh sheds tears that I abandoned him, and then put my shel yad, and then go back to my shel rosh. That's what I have to do practically. Ela, ordinarily, we always say, mitzvah shel yado, if you have a mitzvah shel adam, do it. You must do that particular mitzvah. Don't leave or abandon a mitzvah. So therefore, you must put on the shel yad first, put it on top of your koracha, or on the right side. You must touch it first. So I know halacha. So that's old hat, 40 years old. 1 second, please. What did I learn new? What was my wow movement over here? Sorry? Well, no. That's yours, not mine. Mm-hmm. Mine. Of course, we know that the Rambam preceded the book of Ahava by a book called Mada, knowledge, ideas, Ahava, love, emotion. Here, I've always raised and had the interesting question, of these two, intellectual, conceptual, ideas, and heart, and experience, which is more important? Wow. How do I transmit to a kahal, to a family, to a person off the streets? How do I transmit what Judaism is really all about? Assuming you're in your rabbi, you're in your office, a person walks in and says to you something like, well, I've come to this country 16 years ago, 15 years ago, and I'm from a foreign country, I never could speak English, I learned how to speak English, and now I want to know what it means to be a Jew. My parents, let's say the person comes from Russia, let's say, and they comes to Russia and says, I never knew what it means to be a Jew, heard I'm Jewish, what does it mean? What do? Do you intellectualize them with Judaism, with the ideas and concepts? And I do have an absurd bias towards ideas and concepts and thoughts, on the one hand, or do I experientialize them with the experience of what Torah is really, and Judaism is really all about? Ideas or experience. So here now I have my tefillin. And I have a yad, which is keneged. Yad is keneged halev, the heart, the experience. I have the shorosh, which is keneged, the mind. So ordinarily the Rambam is telling me over here, I cannot pass by a mitzvah. Here we do. Here I leave my shorosh. I leave my shorosh aside. The ideas are left aside because the mind can never fully come before the heart. Ideas are extraordinarily powerful. As Joseph Bennon, you're here still? Okay, good. You're here. Eli's still here. They're going to engage in an intellectual journey this coming week. I think Father should do it together. You get sold on this? At least try. Okay. And they're going to engage in an amazing intellectual journey.
He doesn't know what he's about to do.
Well, he will soon experience it. It'll be an amazing adventure for them, as it was for my children and myself. It's all about ideas, all about thoughts, all about concepts. The best ideas that people have ever thought of in the history of the world, they're going to explore together. They run together, they should now think together in some fashion or other. So that's all about ideas. But if something happens at the end of your adventure, you will see that it all comes apart. Something very tragic or comic takes place in a garden. It's Hadad took place in a garden, and this particular adventure will take place in a garden as well. It's like, I think it's on page 480 or something, or 6. What you know what page? Really towards the end. You know what I'm talking about. Sorry? You know the page? Don't you read carefully? No. This is between us. Between us. And you will see that something explodes in an astounding fashion. I spoke about this about 2 weeks ago when I was in Manhattan. I had a class, and Dr. Shama had engaged, Mara Shama had engaged in this, and he of the class there took my challenge to go through this. He said it was the most amazing experience. Call him, ask him, Dr. Mara Shama, 627-2400. If you can't see straight, that's my call. That's his office, right? Yeah. So ask him, say, what was that all about? So it was astounding. You astounded to me when he got to the end of the journey. So it's about the mind and the heart. Shel yad, shel rosh. And here what the Rambam is saying, ordinarily I'm never allowed to pass by the shel rosh, by the mind. Here I do, because Torah begins with an experience, an emotional aspect of relationship to Borei Olam, and then must proceed to an intellectual appreciation of that emotional experience. First you experience it. Then you have to intellectualize that emotional experience. So this Rambam tells me that if you only have the ideas and you never have the experience, either you have the experience after the ideas, not good enough. You must begin with the experiential aspect of Torah, Shel Yad, Keneged Halev, experience, emotion, then you go to Shel Rosh. Yeah.
So maybe why does Madah come first?
Excellent question, and it does not. Not really. Not really. It does not really come first. It only is classified first. But I have another 7 or 8 pages, and it's really 11 o'clock. And I did want to interactively engage you, and I was going to address that particular question in page, I think it's 8 or 7. But if I don't know how much more time we have. I know it's Sunday, I know you have your families home, so I don't really want to take till 12 o'clock. And I'm getting tired as well, so you don't want to do that. So let me just try to speed it up a little bit without asking you. Do you want to tell me a wow moment? I want to hear your wow moments. Okay, so what you should be doing, everybody, when you're learning to classify as a Siyum, A, you must be pledged and committed to return. You must go back. B, you must be open when you're learning, when you go back, to the awareness that I didn't fully capture everything. I'm going to return prepared and ready to learn and be wowed and blown away by what I'm about to do so. Good. And again, I have another 5 examples of tefillin, Yud Gimel, what that's really all about, which is I'm not going to go right now, and I actually violated, let's do this one for a second. I violated this Isur of Tefillin, Daled Yud Gimel. I think it's an interesting halacha. Not only this, wait. What does it say over here? What does it say?
Wow.
So I wowed this over here. So yes, okay. So yes,
Sammy,
yes,
you're
thank you for
good.
coming.
Thank you.
That's why wow so fast. You want to leave.
Right. So here it has to be something very interesting, and I guess this is worth learning. Kol habatum b'kriyat Shema. Let's say for one reason, this is Tefillin, chapter 4, halacha Yud Gimel. And again, I violated this last week, which is why it was interesting. Kol habatum b'kriyat Shema. If you're not obligated to say Kriyat Shema, for one reason or other, we had studied that in Kriyat Shema earlier. You don't have to put on Tefillin either. Let's say, on the other hand, a Katan, who knows how to take care of Tefillin, of course, his father should buy Tefillin in order to teach him the Bet Mitzvot. Let's say somebody is ill. The person is really ill and can never take himself properly, but he's bitza'ad, he's in pain. You don't have to put on Tefillin if you are bitza'ad any kind. But mitzta'er, if you are a mitzta'er, that means you are in pain, whatever reason. Furthermore, Mark, you with me still?
Yeah.
Okay. What does the next word say? Mitzta'er and. Your mind is not fully focused, you are putting that tefillin. So if you're mitzta'er, of course I understand that. But let's say I'm not mitzta'er, but I can't focus on what tefillin is all about. Rambam says, Shamaniach tefillin. You bring a tefillin, asur lo le'asiyach tato mehen. You're wearing tefillin, you cannot not think of tefillin. You're wearing tefillin right now, and again, it's halakha that I always knew. But all of a sudden, it was written large to me last week, because once you're on tefillin, you have to focus on them. And we'll see in a moment why. And therefore, the next line, I didn't know at the time, Kohanim. When Kohanim are doing the avodah, Leviim, when they're singing their songs in the Beit HaMikdash, and any Israelite, when he was standing in the Mikdash, are all Peturim in tefillin and from tefillah. Kohen, Levi, Israel, you're in Beit HaMikdash, you don't put on tefillin. So how does it apply to me? Obviously last week I was very sick, I couldn't put my head off the pillow, but I put on tefillin every day. It was sad. I mean, I put it on and this and that, I didn't stand up, I couldn't stand up, I was falling, whatever it was, but I had to put on my tefillin. Wrong move. What's even more interesting is that if you were to tell, God forbid, but if we happen to be that sick again, if I ask again, I will still put on tefillin, because I cannot not put on tefillin. That might be a form of avodah zarah, of absolute tefillin to the point where I'm violating the Rambam. So that's a struggle that I'm going to have. But I won't have the struggle if I'm well, so that's not an issue. But if I were ill again, hopefully not, but if you're ill again, now I have to think about, am I well enough to be able to pray, not just put tefillin, I didn't even pray, I prayed, whatever I prayed. Actually I did, I said, little this, little that. Inappropriate. Rav says don't do it. Because a person who has putting on tefillin, asur lo le'asiyach da'ato mehen. You cannot not think about that. So if you cannot fully concentrate on what you're doing, putting on tefillin, you should be putting on tefillin. As a Kohen, as a Levi Israel, Ben HaMikdash. And why is that? Because it says to us over here, in Yudalid, again, when you're wearing tefillin, you should touch them. Lemashmish. This we do. Tefillin, check it. Calls a machin alav, you always says them. You have to make sure you remember you're wearing tefillin, even for a moment. Don't forget, shekedushatan gedulah v'kedushat hatzitz. Say wow.
Wow.
Astounding.
Wow.
The Rambam is saying to us over here that the kedusha of the tefillin, of your tefillin, is so overwhelming, they are actually greater. Your tefillin are greater than the tzitz. What is the tzitz? What is the tzitz? Not the tzitz, no. The Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur had a particular vestment, and he put on tzitz. And what did the tzitz say? Kodesh LaHashem. If I remember correctly, this I have to check, that if any other person wore that tzitz, he's Hayav Karet. If I remember correctly, but I'm not sure, so let's put that on hold. That you have no right to wear the Kohen Gadol's clothing on Yom Kippur. You put it on, you're Hayav Karet. I remember that Gemara Masechet Kiritut. We had one study, Masechet Kiritut, and they give us when you're Hayav Karet. So I remember that when I studied that, going back all the times the person's Hayav Karet, that if you are Minasech, if you anoint yourself with the Moshe Rabbeinu's nisuch that you're hayav karet for that. And if you make it, you're not. It's hom machloket, etc. But I don't remember what the Gemara says regarding wearing the tzitz. But if I remember correctly, perhaps it's so that when you put on that tzitz, which is kadosh la Hashem, you are hayav karet. Push that aside. Your tefillin are more kedushified than the tzitz itself. And so as to why. Now again, I would have to check when I come back to study this with Mark, whenever we start doing this again. You want to know, Mark, right now, what question? What strikes you? What do you want to know now about this halacha?
There was only one before. I don't know how we'll put tefillin on.
Tomorrow. I was afraid you'd say that.
Any day.
Any day. This could be a problem.
Yes.
I hear that. I recognize and I respect that point. Put them on anyway. Put it on anyway.
That's really an argument for shorter meaning.
Yes.
I agree. I need one more second and we'll do it. That's it. It's a legitimate point. Yeah, I think it's an absolute point. One of the ideas that had come through by studying the whole Rambam in this whole section is how short the Rambam's tefillah was. We had 2.5 or 3 hours of Shabbat. The Rambam was 20 minutes. He's home free. So there's something to be said for a shorter, more focused tefillah with kavanah rather than hazanut and all the other things that we do and stuff. Yeah, sorry, keep you
But
waiting.
a few hours of derasha.
Well, okay, yeah, good.
I was just thinking about your running to tefillin. Is it actively thinking the entire time, or is it being aware? This is a big
Awareness.
Actively thinking.
It's actually, I'm going to conclude all of this in 5 minutes on that issue of awareness. It's an excellent point. You will see that the key point over here will be awareness level. There's level 1, level 2. We'll get to that point with after Mordechai's point. So that will get to. So the Kedusha. So Mark's question should have been, what's the source of this Rambam? Well, Rambam is a traditionalist. Everything has a source to it. The Hipus, search, thank you. The search for the origin of the Rambam's halachot has taken on a life of its own. There are multiple commentaries, hundreds. Where did the Rambam get his halacha from? And one of the Hidushim is that the Rambam used Yerushalmi that nobody did in those days. Yerushalmi is cleansed, it's clean. Nobody used Yerushalmi. Bibli was taken, spoken, walked up and everything else like that. Yerushalmi nobody used. Rambam used Yerushalmi. So there's a book called Chol Yerushalmi where I saw Lieberman, one of the greatest thinkers of the Jewish people in the 20th century, where Saul Lieberman has a book called Chol Yerushalmi, the Rambam, where we found the source of that Rambam, Yerushalmi. Nobody knew this, Rambam found it. Because nobody used Yerushalmi in those days. Yerushalmi is notoriously difficult to understand. Those who have opened up Yerushalmi see how hard it is to understand. Very difficult. But the Rambam uses Yerushalmi and this whole halachot. So Mark and I want to find the source of this Rambam. Is it a midrash? Is it a halacha? Is it a gemara? Or did the Rambam put it this way? I doubt it. But let's see. Rambam explains it. Interesting, when the Rambam explains something, it does speak of the fact that perhaps he has no source. Otherwise, call it for me a source. Pasuk or midrash or gemara. He doesn't. He explains the logic behind it. So you have a logical source as opposed to a Talmudic source. That's of interest, but we have to pursue that more. The tzitz has Kodesh La Hashem, one name. Ve'il, these tefillin, yesh bahem, Ehad ve'asnim Shem. 21 times of the Yud, and Hel Shel Rosh, of Mutar B'Shel Yad. So you have 21 times the Shem Hashem. Therefore, the Rambam logically concludes that your tefillin are more kedushified than actually the tzitz. So that's an astounding particular point. Good. So now let's go a little bit further and think about it. If when one is putting on tefillin, and one has to think of how much thought you have to have when you put on tefillin, and that should be focused. So again, I would tell you, practically speaking, let's say you have to get to work, and you're going to pray in the car, something like that. Put it in the car, and you pray, take 3 minutes beforehand, put tefillin at home, your mind is full of that kedusha, and then put them away, and then pray when you can pray. It's two different mitzvot, tefillin and tefillah. Have tefillin with tremendous kedusha, take 3 more minutes, put them on, say the Shema, and then go to work and pray, whether it's on the way or wherever you're going to pray. But tefillin is so holy, don't try to put on tefillin when you're praying in the car. one should, and driving. One should, or
Yeah,
texting.
driving.
And texting.
Raymond.
I don't do that, I don't do that.
Next thing to Hashem.
Raymond never did that. He always said,
Crazy.
So that's, now, there are a few more places over here, but I'm going to go now to my last 2 points. Last 2 points. So we've covered now 2 of the 3 points regarding Siyum. A, you return, but you return with an eye to discovering something new, a new formulation, understanding. You want to be wowed the second time around. You're not going to simply read with no hidush. When you learn, when you study, you're a changed person. Physiologically, intellectually, emotionally, you have a new child in your family. Everything you read from now on will take on significance. When you read the Perashah and you think about Akedah Yitzhak, what if Borei Olam asked me to sacrifice my firstborn? Everything's on a new you, a new coloring, because you now have a child. You're a changed person. It's God's greatest blessing you could have. So everything that you read now will take on a new meaning to it. So you return with an eye to something new. Don't read simply without a chidush. You must think of that chidush. The third point, in order to classify as a siyum, beyond return, beyond getting wowed by your return and learn something new, third point is an attempt to conceptualize all that you've learned. Broad principles, ideas. The Rambam was one of the greatest of conceptualizers in human history. One of the greatest minds in human history. As Dr. Joel Kramer says in his book on the Rambam. Not the greatest minds among the Jewish people. That, of course, I know, I understand that. But the Rambam, one of the greatest minds in human history. We've had great minds, Newton, Einstein. The Rambam is astounding. One cannot over-exaggerate, as Mari pointed out before. You cannot exaggerate the Rambam's astounding mental abilities. And it's not I'm making it up, it's right in front of you. You see, the more you know. And again, those who have the ability should read Rabbi Twersky's book on the Rambam, chapter 1 and chapter 2. You guys are busy, you can't do that, Benins. But when you have a chance, you're not ready for either, but when you have a chance, you read chapter 1 and chapter 6 of that particular book. That's the Rambam. And Rabbi Twersky got it. He understands, he knows the Rambam. He spent 50 years, 60 years. He himself is a great mind in of itself. Rabbi Soloveitchik's son-in-law, Rabbi Ezra Twersky, was a professor at Harvard and gave shiurim and all that. So the Rambam's greatness partially was his ability to conceptualize, making a concept, taking 100,000 details and putting it into a conceptual formula. That was the Rambam. It was also Rabbi Soloveitchik, which is one of the interesting parallels and exciting moments of life. Studying Rabbi Soloveitchik was that you understood conceptualization by virtue of what he formulated. His formulations were so unique and so had that ability to take 5 little details and all of a sudden crystal clear. And all these details contradicted each other. So to me, there, one concept, everything is smooth and harmonious. So the third point that we have to do right now in the next 7 or 8 minutes is to conceptualize what you've learned. Taking away one broad-based principle from that section of Torah that you have just learned. So now, what are we going to take away from a siyum of the book of Ahava? Now, of course, there are multiple concepts. Shalom aleichem b'recha tova. Ken yi ratzon. There are multiple concepts. Yet, my one idea that I take away from the book of Ahava, related to Mordechai's point before, is that Ahava does not stand alone. You cannot do what we just did. You can't siyumize the book of Ahava. The Rambam will not let you do what we thought we just did. So the Rambam formulated book Ahava in a fashion that Ahava is not really standing alone whatsoever. In numerous examples throughout the book of Ahava, the Rambam makes often reference to all the ideas that he actually placed in the book of Madah. You have to go back to Madah to understand Ahava. As for example, the Rambam talks about mezuzah, and again I have 10 examples of this, not to go into it right now, where the Rambam talks about Yehud Hashem. The most conceptual and profound principle of Torah Judaism is the oneness, aloneness, and uniqueness of Borei Olam, such that Borei Olam, as you know, as I formulated this, Borei Olam's uniqueness is in fact unique. You know what I mean by that. You have a unique tie, I have a unique shirt. They share the quality of uniqueness. Both are unique. No, Borei Olam's uniqueness is in fact unique. I'm saying the Shema every day. There are 6 ideas that I try to incorporate when I say the Shema every single day. 6 ideas, not for now. But based on all the Rambam and things like that, what does Yud Keh Vav Keh mean? Rambam tells us what it means. Moreh Nevuchim, part 1, chapter 61. Rambam tells us what Yud Keh Vav Keh actually means in his formulation. It's one of my ideas. When I study on the Tanakh level, I think of Devarim Perek Yud, Pasuk Yud Zayin. Look it up. That's one of my favorite Pasukim as well. That, if you look up Yud, Perek Yud of Yud, Pasuk Yud Zayin Yud Het, then Dayan Amon, etc. That's where you find another idea. It's what Yud Keh Vav Keh. You're saying something. Shema Yisrael. It involves 2 ideas. I don't go into this right now, but it involves 2 ideas. Hearing it, Kabbalah all mitzvot, accepting the mitzvot. Idea 2. Hashem, Yud Keh Vav Keh. What does that mean? You have to have a concept. What does that mean? So the Rambam has taught something on that. Think of Shemot Perek Gimel. What does Yud Keh Vav in that context? What does that mean? So I give us hints as to what Yud Keh Vav Keh means. Elokeinu. What does it mean, Elokeinu, as opposed to Yud Keh Vav Keh? Elokeinu means I accept the sovereignty of. So I accept that Yud Keh Vav Keh understanding, Elokeinu. I accept the sovereignty of Yud Keh Vav Keh. And then Yud Keh Vav Keh, Ehad. Oneness, aloneness, uniqueness. But that's all not good enough. How do I express that all I've thought about is not there? By saying, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchut Va'ed. That phrase indicates that I have really violated. If I say Baruch what do? I made a mistake. I thought it was an apple. It's not an apple. Let's say tangerine, and I cannot eat tangerines. Say Baruch what do I say at that point? Right. I say Baruch Shem Kevod Va'ed because that adds to the glory that I just diminished by taking God's name in vain. So in that sense, you have to ask the question: why did the rabbis formulate the Shema by having Baruch Shem Kevod Va'ed at that point in time? It's not part of the pasuk. Obviously not. In Devarim, you don't have Baruch Shem Kevod Va'ed. So why do I put that over there? Because what you just thought and your formulation of this Shema really is a violation of what Yud Keh Vav Keh is all about, because one cannot fully understand or conceptualize what Borei Olam is all about. So therefore, it's Baruch Shem Kevod Va'ed. So it nullifies your statement. Good. So that's good. Okay. So the Rambam will ongoingly, in Ahava, by making references as in Mezuzah, as in the Shema. Remember, Shema, astoundingly enough, this great concept is not in De'ot, or rather, more precisely, it is in De'ot, it's in the first book of knowledge, but it's also in Ahava. It's formally in Ahava. People have to understand Ahava. So therefore the Rambam will interrelate Ahava and De'ot ongoingly. And in one very nice, well formulation, if you would, I'm not going to go through this right now, but the Rambam concludes at the end of the Halachot of Berachot, a great chapter, Perek Shiviri, that again I knew this, but new idea, chapter 7, Halacha 1, Minhagot Rabot Naguach Me'Israel, B'S'odah, the rabbis had many customs in Seudah, V'chulan Derech Eretz, eat as a civilized human being. The rabbis understood that food can create a chaotic, uncivilized situation. All you do is have to have a Sevet, with Kibbutz Hamajin, you know what the Rambam is talking about.